Hello, good evening. Welcome to this edition of Good Evening Ghana. Tonight we have many important discussions for your attention. We will have in the studio the lawyer for the senior minister in respect of the matter that you may have seen on social media. It is about the Auditor General who has been convicted of contempt. Very controversial circumstances. We'll be talking about that tonight. Then also we have a special feature tonight where we are predicting, no, we are not predicting, we are previewing the Supreme Court event of tomorrow. Tomorrow, the Supreme Court will pronounce, 7 judges of the Supreme Court will pronounce on the verdict whether or not Martin Benz-Kaiser Alamisi Amidu should continue as the special prosecutor in Ghana. The case has been filed against him by Dominic Ayini, former Deputy Attorney General and Member of Parliament. And we do some analysis about the lawyers that Dominic Ayini selected to prosecute the case on his behalf. Very interesting names you see there. Of course, the government side is led by the Office of the Attorney General. So we will have a look at that. So that's also coming up in this edition. And then our research analysis about December 7th, whether COVID will happen or not, has taken us to another level. And tonight we'll share with you what our new information is. So we have 2 interviews in the studio, 2 live interviews with lawyer Opong Yao Opong, who is counsel for Senior Minister Yao Safumafu in the matter in which the Auditor General has been convicted for contempt. Lawyer Opong will also talk to us about the current pressing issue, the nomination hearings, appointment hearings of Supreme Court judges or Supreme Court judge nominees that is currently occurring before the Parliament. Yesterday and today, Lawyer Opong will talk to us about some of the controversial ones that you may have heard. A judge whose appointment is going now to the Committee of the Whole, as they say in Parliament, because he's reported to have endorsed President Akufo-Addo. We'll talk about that. And also Justice Amadou Tanko, the first authentic Islamic judge to be nominated by any president in the Republic of Ghana. He also appeared before the nomination committee. And we heard today Professor Mensa Bonsu and Yo Nicolendi will be talking about that. We are starting the program, though, with celebration of anniversaries. And tonight, we are celebrating the first anniversary of the Kumi Preko matches. We don't have the video yet, but we have put this photograph on the screen, and we pay tributes to these gallant men who in 1995 led the first major political event in Ghana since 1948 and since the independence struggle. The Kumi Preko marches were supposed to protest against hardship in Ghana relating to the introduction of the value-added tax system. In the photograph, you see seated in the middle is the Venerable Dr. Charles Reko Brobe. He's right there in the middle. You can see him. And to his left-hand side is the young Kweku Baku Jr. And this photograph was taken when one of the victims of Kumi Preko, one of the fatalities of Kumi Preko, was buried. His name is Jerry Ope, and he was buried sometime in June 1995. And this photograph was taken at the burial service. Charles Brobe, Kweku Baku. To the left of Kweku Baku is Dr. Nyao Tamaklo. And let me go to the top row right there. The man in the white beard, gray beard, I should say, is Victor Newman. Victor Newman is currently the Director of Research at the Office of the President at the Jubilee House. Next to Victor Newman, I believe, is a man called Kakraba Cromwell. Mr. Cromwell was a leading figure in the National Union of Ghana students in those days, and he joined the demonstration on his own. Mr. Cromwell lives in the United States of America, but he has continued to take interest in Ghana's politics. This is a lot of history we are sharing with you tonight. Then next after him, to his right-hand side, of course, the unmistakable figure of Kwesi Pratt Jr., who was one of the leading figures of this demonstration as well. Kwesi Pratt has continued to sound the alarm for the underprivileged and to sound the alarm to keep government on the straight and narrow. Tonight, we congratulate all these men for blazing the trail and setting the standards for our democratic governance. Next to Kwesi Pratt is a man, I believe, is named Kweku Poku. Kweku Poku used to work as a designer, as an artist of sorts with Harun Atta and others, and he was very interested in politics in those days. Kweku Poku, young man at the time. Now seated in front of Kweku Poku to his left-hand side is lawyer Tony Akoto Ampao, whom we know very well and who is still quite in the thick of affairs. Lawyer Akoto Ampao led Jubilee 2000 in the year 2000, which was a movement to inform the rich countries to forgive debts of African countries. Jubilee 2000 was successful, and in Ghana we benefited from HIPIC, which was as part of Jubilee 2000. Contempt continues to work for the interest of democracy, and he's also been at the forefront of the push to get the Freedom of Information Bill passed in Ghana. And of course, to the left-hand side of Contempt, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, now President of the Republic of Ghana, and sitting in the big chair now. So these are the men who made Kumi Preko history many years ago. Some of our viewers were not born. So when you see them in the street, tell them that on Good Evening Ghana, we said high five to them. They have done an excellent job for Ghana, and they continue to do so. Okay, another celebration is occurring on our list tonight, and is celebrating a man. Another man who has distinguished himself in the service of Ghana, and he has done that through the pulpit. The Archbishop Nicholas Duncan Williams is celebrating today his 64th birthday, and we wish him well, we wish him God's blessing, we wish him God's peace. And on this program, we have developed a relationship with the Archbishop, but one of our biggest exposures with the Archbishop is one that we are going to show you. The next 4 minutes will show you a video of an interview he gave us that actually went viral, and that gave us a lot of exclusivity. The Archbishop was talking passionately about how Ghana should move forward in the way that he sees it. Here it is.
I believe, contrary to what anybody may say, and I'm a Ghanaian, and I have my constitutional right to speak as I will. I believe that one of the things that will help the nations of Africa is for us to have national coalitions from all political parties.
We are thinking about the institutionalizing the national agenda.
Yes, come together, get traditional rulers, religious leaders, labor, business community, the youth, even the army, bring them all together. Let's have and let's come together with a national agenda of what we want in this country. For instance, in Rwanda, it's a law that nobody sleeps in mad houses.
Nobody.
Nobody. You don't build a mad house. You pull it down. It's against the law. Let's have a national agenda as a people that we work on. And let's agree that the next 25 years, there will be no, what do you call it, every 4 years election. No election. 25 years, no election.
This is serious.
Every 5 years.
I like that. I like
every
that
5 years, we should appoint a president.
Appoint
a president from among
the people,
the parties that have formed a national coalition. So these 5 years is your party.
Next 5 years.
Next 5 years is our party.
25 years.
Yes. And
no election.
No election.
No party politics.
No party
no
politics.
rallies.
No rallies. And our agenda is follow, execute, perform the national agenda for the sake of the next generation. What we are doing right now, we are not going anywhere. Because watch this, I'm telling you, what we are doing right now, I want you to stand. Let me show you something. Just stand. If I'm in opposition, just face this way. If I'm in opposition and you are in office, I hold your leg like that. Try to move.
Yeah.
Try to move.
I cannot move.
Try to do something. You are not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I will make sure I circumvent you and sabotage you until you leave office.
Wow.
And when you also come,
same thing.
I will also do the same to you. So I don't wish you well, you don't wish me well. So the nation is bleeding. The nation is bleeding, and no continuity, because when you come, everything I've done, you have to condemn it and let the people know that I was a failure, I was a disappointment, and you have come to fix it. Then when you come and face the reality of what is on the ground, you realize that it's not easy to fix this thing. And then I'm also going to make sure I expose you and let people know that you circumvented me to come, so you must not succeed, and I'll make sure you fail, so I'll come again. So the vindictiveness continues, the hatred continues, the bitterness continues. We are dividing people. I have people in this church who are family. Some are NDC, some are MPP, and sometimes it's amazing to see how they relate to one another.
Because of politics.
Because of politics. We are dividing the churches. The churches are divided. Husband and wives. One is NDC, one is MPP.
Brothers
and sisters. And the hatred and the bitterness and sometimes the arguments. The way they argue and the things they say. are people in this church MPP people in this church. When NDC was in office and I used to pray for President Mahama, you should see how they attacked me. They used to come to my office here and attack me and say, what is your problem? And some people will even tell you, stop praying for them, let them fail. When we come, we'll fix the problem. And I look at them and I say, what kind of a thinking is this? Now that NDC is gone and MPP has come, and I'm praying based on scripture, it's a command. And the Bible said, the prophet Samuel said, he said, woe is me to sin against the Lord by not praying for you. And he says, sin not to pray for your leaders. And it's clear in the New Testament and the Old Testament. But there are Christians in this church, in my own churches, who, because of their political parties and what they believe their parties can accomplish and everything, praying for the present government, are angry with me.
Really?
And yeah, they're angry and they tell me. They're angry with me. And some of them say, I don't even pay my tithe.
So you think we should do this 25-year plan?
We have to do it.
A very happy birthday to the commanding Archbishop Nicholas Duncan Williams. Apparently he is going to be 63, or he is 63 years old today. He spent his time today in Parliament supporting the Venerable Yoni Kulendi, who appeared before Parliament's nomination committee. Today has been a very busy day for the courts. Many hearings have come up, and also a busy day in Parliament about the courts, because Parliament was vetting Supreme Court justices. The first matter that has caught people's attention today is about the High Court's ruling in a matter concerning the former chairman of the National Communication Authority. As you know, because of my relationship with the NCA, I'm unable to comment on this matter, and I'm unable to lead a conversation about it on this program. I believe that other TV and radio programs can do the commentary on that one. Here on Good Evening Ghana, I am unable to discuss the NCA matter because of my relationship with the NCA. There was another matter which we're going to discuss fully. The Auditor General was today convicted of contempt. What does that mean? The Auditor General has been in a quarrel with the Senior Minister, Yaosafo Mafo, about some payments that the Auditor General alleges were made without due process to a UK company called Kroll. $4 million, it is said, is how much money was paid. So his lawyer, the lawyer for the Honorable Yaosafo Mafo, who incidentally is the victor in this particular interlocutory matter, is here in the studio to talk to us about what happened. But corruption watchers are concerned about the Auditor General, who is said to be or thought to be an anti-corruption pillar, and it says on your screen now is the Auditor General. He's said to be an anti-corruption pillar, that he would be convicted of contempt. We will come to that in some detail here on this show. But whilst the legal corridors of Ghana has been very busy today, it's going to be even busier tomorrow. Tomorrow, the courts are going to come up with a ruling, and it is going to be one of the biggest constitutionally defining moments of this Akufo-Addo administration. We know of the cases that have already been fought, including the cathedral matter, the regional distribution, matters concerning the Electoral Commission's ability to hold the Ayawaso West Wogon. All of these civil matters have been successfully dealt with by the Office of the Attorney General, led by Deputy Attorney General Godfrey Dame. Tomorrow, he confronts a Herculean task, and the enormity of the task confronting the Attorney General's office tomorrow cannot be underestimated. In what is to follow right now, we have a commentary for you about what is happening in court tomorrow relating to the future of Martin Amidu. Let's get it down. So this week started on a legal constitutional note with the appointment committee hearings of the Supreme Court justices nominees nominated by President Akufo-Addo for the Supreme Court. And there's been major court cases and court rulings, some of which we are discussing on this program. As you are aware from our poster, we're looking at the contempt conviction of the Auditor General, and we're going to look at other matters. But tomorrow, just before I talk about tomorrow, I have to talk about the vetting, the appointment committee hearings of the legal elephant, Yoni Kulendi, who appeared before the appointment committee hearings today. He was spectacular in his expressions, and I think that a lot of things he said should be documented for law students to have a look. Congratulations, and congratulations in advance to Justice of the Supreme Court, Kulendi JSC, as he will now be known, a Justice of the Supreme Court. And everybody who was watching was excited by his candidness and his forthrightness before the appointment committee Later on, my guest in the studio will be talking about Amadou Tanko as well and other judges who appeared before the Supreme Court. Congratulations, Alhaji Amadou Tanko. He has been approved by Parliament, ready to be sworn in by the President as a Supreme Court judge. And it's good for the Islamic community in this period of Ramadan. We say congratulations to Amadou Tanko. But tomorrow, there's a big matter before the Supreme Court, and they're going to hear it. It's a matter that impinges on politics. It's a matter that impinges on corruption. It's a matter that impinges on the chase of public money. And it's a matter that impinges on the qualifications of a man. His name is Martin Amidou Benz-Kaiser. He has been nominated by the President, as you know. And if we want to check the date, on the 14th of November in 2017, Parliament had the opportunity to pass the Office of the Special Prosecutor Act. It was passed. And on the 11th of January 2018, Benz-Kaiser Alamisi Amidou was nominated by the President. But somewhere along the line, he has been challenged in terms of his qualification for the job. Tomorrow, 7 justices will pronounce on the verdict, whether Martin Amidou can go on or whether Martin Amidou will be removed from his office in Laboni back to his house in Medina to spend the rest of his retirement. The judges upon who this responsibility falls, His Lordship, the Learned Chief Justice, Mr. Justice Eni Yeboah himself, he'll be presiding. Then there's Mr. Justice Bafo Boni. Then there's Mr. Justice Badegbe. And then there's Mr. Justice Mafosao. Then there's Madame Doji, Justice Doji. And then there's also Justice Nene Amegache and also Justice Ni Ashikote. All of them will be ready tomorrow morning to deliver this very, very famous, what will become a very famous judgment in the annals of the Supreme Court. We'll tell you about the case in a minute, but I have to say that Justice Nene Amegache and Justice Ni Ashikote were both my lecturers a few years ago, or is it many years ago? And I remember them with gladness, both of them very, very good lecturers, and they are the reason why I can say the things I'm saying. Okay, so the matter before the court tomorrow is quite simple. First of all, it has a very political connection. For good or for ill, this case has a very political connection, and it's as follows. So the plaintiff, the one who brought the matter to the court, challenging the eligibility and qualifications of Mr. Justice Martin Amidou to be the special prosecutor, is Mr. Dominic Ayini, Member of Parliament, and also former Deputy Attorney General under the Mahama administration. He's the plaintiff who filed the matter before the Supreme Court. Now, who are his lawyers? His lawyers are lawyer for President Mahama in the election petition case, Tony Letha. He is one of the lawyers for Mr. Dominic Ayini. And guess who the other lawyer is? Marietta Brew-Upon, who is the former Learned Attorney General of the Republic under President Mahama. So Dominic Ayini, Tony Letha, Marietta Brew-Upon, actually, you can say, represents the NDC's legal juggernaut. And they have dropped this case before the Supreme Court for an interpretation. And they are inviting the Supreme Court to pronounce that Martin Amidou is not qualified to be special prosecutor. Now, all of their strength is being heaped upon a young man, bright young man, I should say. Deputy Attorney General Godfrey Yeboah is resisting the application before the Supreme Court on behalf of the government and on behalf of the President. So it's been an interesting matter. So what are they saying? What is each party saying? Now, Dominic Ayini is saying to the court that on the strength of the 1992 Constitution, a public servant is able to serve the Republic until he's 60 years old. Martin Amidou is 66 years old at the time he was nominated by the President, 2018, so he's probably now 68. But the case has been running for 2 years. It's such an important case that the Supreme Court had to take time to listen to the arguments back and forth, and they are ready with the ruling, the judgments tomorrow. So they are saying that Martin Amidou is 66. How can a 66-year-old man be within the context of public service, which ends at 60? They say a lot of legal things, but that's the basic, for the basic understanding, this is what they are saying. So he should go. Okay. What is Godfrey Dame saying? The Godfrey Dame is saying, no, wait a minute. Have another look at it. There is a public service and another kind of public service. So there's a public service who has been employed as a career public servant. He is 60. But the other public servants who are not career public servants, they can go beyond 60. And he makes the argument. Would you say, for instance, that a minister who is a public servant has the age of 60? No. There are ministers who are over 60. There are ministers who are 70. You can have ministers who are 80. Godfrey Dame is saying that the 1992 Constitution did not make any provision for that category of public servants. He's asking the Supreme Court to look at public servants through two spectacles. The public servant who is the career public servant who begins at whatever age and retires at 60, employed in a career faction, retires at 60. And then the non-public servant appointed by the president to play the role of a public servant. But he's not a career public servant, so he could be an engineer and he's Minister of Health. If you are a regular, what Godfrey Dame is saying is that if you are a regular public servant, you will not be an engineer and be working as a doctor. You will be a doctor, you'll be working as a doctor. You're a career public servant. You are an administrator, you are an administrator. That's your training, that's your career. But if you are the other kind of public servant, you can be an engineer and you will be Deputy Minister of Health. So Godfrey Dame is asking the Supreme Court to look at it in this context. Now, there's another leg to Godfrey Dame's analysis, which is quite interesting. He says that Article 88 of the 1992 Constitution empowers the Attorney General to ask other people to prosecute on behalf of the state. The Attorney General is the principal prosecutor on behalf of the state. But the law allows him or her, in this case her, Gloria Kufu, to ask other people to prosecute, and that the office of the special prosecutor is captured within the context of the powers granted the Attorney General under Article 88. It is for that reason that in the law that establishes public prosecutor, it is the Attorney General who actually recommends to the President. So he's saying that Attorney General can ask customs to prosecute, can ask police to prosecute, can ask any person at all to prosecute on behalf of the state. When the Attorney General is giving that responsibility to the third party, the Constitution does not limit the age of that third party, and that Martin Amidu's office of special prosecutor falls within that context. So we don't know what the court is going to do, but this has political ramifications. So that if Dominic Ayine wins the case tomorrow, Martin Amidu will have to pack bag and baggage from his Laboni office, where I had the opportunity to visit him once, and go back to his house in Medina and close shop. The president would have to nominate somebody else to the office of special prosecutor. Will it be a dent on the president's appointing powers? Would it be a dent on the fight against corruption? Would it be a dent on Martin Amidu's whole personality and his whole citizen vigilante crusade? I don't know. But if Dominic Ayine succeeds tomorrow, Martin Amidu is out. Now, the case has been very political, because NDC seems to be filing and NPP is defending. So if Godfrey Dame is able to successfully resist the matter tomorrow, if the Supreme Court rules in such a way that Godfrey Dame wins, Martin Amidu remains. If Martin Amidu remains, it means that he's now empowered to go all the way and go for his work. Politically, we know that he's dealing with the Airbus matter. Is it going to give Martin Amidu some impetus to drive into the Airbus matter? Is he going to get over himself a little bit? We don't know. But really, he seems to have been worried about the case that has been filed against him. Those were some of his early comments, that he didn't understand why such a case was filed against him. So if tomorrow he comes out successful, is he going to look at the plaintiff and the lawyers behind the plaintiff as his opponents and therefore go after them one way or the other? I don't know. I'm just raising issues. I'm just saying I don't know anything. So let's wait to see what the Supreme Court does. But the big responsibility is on the shoulders of the 7. And we hope that they will discharge it in the interest of the Republic, and they will discharge it according to the will of God.
In the circumstances, the overall effect is that the first respondent was validly elected, and the petition is therefore dismissed. Our various judgments, for the sake of convenience, are handed over to the registrar of this court.
Okay, so we've been seeing your Facebook messages and we're going to respond to them after the next video. Yao Points in the studio is counsel for the Honorable Senior Minister Yao Safo-Mafo, and they got a victory today in court in a preliminary matter in which they sued the Auditor General for contempt, and he was duly convicted today. What's the meaning of that? We're going to find that out. And what does Yao Pon think about the vetting process of Justice Amadou Tanko, who has now been confirmed by Parliament Appointments Committee, and about Justice Hona Nugu, about whom there's some controversy? He's reported in his capacity as a chief to have told his people publicly that President Akufo-Addo should get a second term in office. He had expressed support for the president in his capacity as a chief. He appeared before the committee yesterday. He was asked a question. He apologized, but the committee could not give him a preliminary passing. His matter has therefore been referred to the committee of the whole, and the entire parliament will have a look at it. All things being equal, he would pass. But Yao Pon will explain to us what that means and what is his own views as a lawyer, 20 years at the bar, about these matters. We'll talk about that. And then also, we have in the studio the MPP parliamentary candidate for the Klote-Korle constituency. And we'll be talking about Klote-Korle in some detail. You know that last week we launched our political programming for Good Evening Ghana for election 2020. We are beginning from the hot constituency, Klote-Korle, and the MPP candidate is in the studio tonight. He's also an official, a top official of the National Health Insurance Services. And so he'll be asking some questions. He'll be answering questions relating to COVID and the National Health Insurance Services. The big question is that the NHIS is reported to have made donations to the COVID fund. Many private hospitals were incensed by that donation because they said that the NHIS owes them a lot of money. So why is the NHIS donating money to the COVID funds when they have to be paying private hospitals that they owe? He is going to talk to us in his capacity there as the head of accounting at the NHIS. And later on, we'll get into politics where he'll be introducing himself to us as a new kid on the block for the Klote-Korle constituency. So that's a full political program coming up. Now we're going to watch our analysis on what we call the new learning about COVID and December 7th. We have already put out some analysis that the Constitution has given us options in terms of what happens if the elections don't happen. We have narrowed down, as you remember, on Article 1133. Tonight we are getting new learning out of this matter, and we have recorded something for you to look at. Without much ado, here is our latest views on December 7th and COVID. When we talked about COVID-19 and December 7th elections, we made the point that if COVID-19 persists, and we hope it doesn't, and by December 7th we are not able to have the election, the Constitution, we said to you, throws us up a few options. So we looked at different options and dismissed some of the options, and we stayed with one option. Tonight, we are here to update the information. We are here to give you the latest on what our research has found, because we have continued to interrogate the matter. We have continued to ventilate the issues and talking to lawyers and talking to judges. And we now seem to have formulated a new position on the matter. Well, is it new? It's an additional position to the matter that we want to share with you. And encourage you that also talk to your friends who are lawyers, talk to your relatives who are lawyers, and we can get on with it. So we dismissed the position of a state of emergency on Article 31. We said it won't work. And we also dismissed the position of the Chief Justice taking over because the three arms of government have gone, or because the first two arms of government have gone, the executive and the legislature have gone, and Chief Justice takes over. We dismissed that as well. But then we led you to Article 1133 of the 1992 Constitution. Have a look at it again. This is what we said. So Article 1133 of the 1992 Constitution, now on your screen, says, where after a dissolution of Parliament, but before the holding of a general election, the President is satisfied that owing to the existence of a state of war or a state of public emergency in Ghana or any part of Ghana, it is necessary to recall Parliament, the President shall cause to be summoned the Parliament that has been dissolved to meet. And 4 continues to say, unless the life of the Parliament is extended under the provisions of Clause 2 of this article, the general election of members of Parliament shall proceed, and the Parliament that has been recalled shall, if not sooner dissolved, again stand dissolved on the dates appointed for the general election. So our analysis then was that because Article 1133 talked about the state of a public emergency, and because COVID-19 appears to be a state of public emergency, we actually congratulated the framers of the Constitution for their foresight. And then we made the point that because 1133 has the power to sustain Parliament, it means it does also have the power to sustain the Speaker. We also discussed the rather controversial issue of the role of the president in 1133, because the law says the president it is who will then extend the life of parliament. But it has to happen upon the dissolution of parliament. We contrived that because the president's tenure is almost certainly coterminous with the tenure of parliament, that as soon as parliament is dissolved, the president's tenure also ends, that the president conceivably will not be able to exercise his authority under 1133 after the dissolution of parliament. So we made the point that the president can exercise that authority prospectively. That is to say, if by December 7th we are aware that we cannot hold elections, or even by November we are aware that we cannot hold elections on December 7th, the president can make provisions and say that he's exercising his powers under Article 1133, that on 6th January, when the parliament automatically dissolves, he continues the life of the parliament. These are the arguments that we made on that occasion, and we were convinced by these arguments. So the point then was, okay, so parliament is sustained, the president goes, and we sufficiently made that point. The president going is automatic, the vice president going is automatic. And the executive of government, ministers and deputy ministers, they all go with the president. So we gave you the legal basis for that. So we said parliament remains. If parliament remains, then the speaker remains. If the speaker remains, we flipped onto Article 60, where there's a provision that says that if there's no president, there's no vice president, the Speaker of Parliament becomes the president. And incidentally, the Speaker of Parliament, when he becomes a president, to exercise executive authority, he ought to call elections within 90 days. Let's go to Article 60:11 and 60:13 and have a look at that. And it says, where the president and the vice president are both unable to perform the functions of the president, the Speaker of Parliament shall perform those functions until the president or the vice president is able to perform those functions, or a new president assumes office, as the case may be. 60:13 is also interesting. It says, where the Speaker of Parliament assumes the office of president as a result of death, resignation, or removal from office of the president and the vice president, there shall be a presidential election within 3 months after the assumption of office. There shall be a presidential election within 3 months after his assumption of office. So this is where we ended our argument, and we were convinced that the combined effect of Article 1133 and 4 and Article 60:11 and 60:13 thereof would give Ghana the opportunity to respond to the COVID crisis in case that we are not able to hold elections on December 7th. So 1133 will establish a parliament, and therefore there will be a speaker. 60:11, the combined effect and the replacing effect and the juxtaposing effect of 60:11 and 60:13 together, read together, will mean that the speaker can assume office when the president is unavailable, the vice president is unavailable, the speaker can assume the office of president, and as the law says in 60:13, he must hold elections. But there's new learning, and I'm going to throw that at you, and then you can also deal with it. So the new learning is this. Those who disagree with us, and whom we have had to agree with right now, do not quarrel with Article 1133 or 4. They don't quarrel with that. They agree with us that Article 1133 gives the opportunity to continue parliament. But then, the point they make is that there's no opportunity to continue the executive. So you won't have an executive. You must have an executive, you must have a parliament, and you must have a judiciary for governance systems to work. That's what the Constitution prescribes: executive, legislature, and judiciary. Our window of creating the executive was to sponge on Article 60:11 and 13, where it says that the vice president, if the president and the vice president are not available, the speaker will take over. But here's the catch. We are being told, and we have had to agree with it, that the Article 60:11 and 60:13 is conceptualized by the framers of the Constitution to be within the term of the president and the vice president, not outside their term. What it means is that where the president is unavailable, for some reason he's not available, and then for another reason the vice president is not available, but their tenure has not expired. The 4-year tenure granted them by the Constitution has not expired, but within that tenure they are not available. The speaker will take over as president until one of them become available or until a new president is given. So that the framers of the law do not contemplate the speaker exercising executive authority outside the president's term. So President Akufo-Addo's term ends on the 7th of January 2021. The law does not contemplate the Speaker of Parliament exercising President Akufo-Addo's term outside after the 7th of January. it is within 7 January 2017 and 7 January 2021. Any other person who is allowed by the Constitution to exercise the authority of the elected Akufo-Addo is to do that within 7th January 2017 and 7th January 2021, where either he's not available, he has traveled, he can't continue to hold office within his term, and same within the vice president's term. So the vice president can hold the president's role within the president's term, and the speaker can hold the role of the president outside the vice president within the president's term. That outside the president's term, the law does not contemplate that the speaker will hold office. So that's the new learning. I don't know whether I'm making sense. I don't know whether you're with me. That no other authority under the Constitution can hold the president's term when the term has expired, because what you are holding is the residual power of the president. It's not. He's not there, so you can hold the power. So it is within the same term. The people of Ghana have elected somebody to be president and elected somebody to be vice president. If they are not available, the Constitution says the speaker can step in within the term. But when the term is over, no one can step in. This is the new learning that we are bringing to your attention today. Very, very complicated and very interesting. So what's the conclusion? The conclusion was Article 298. Where the law says that where something has happened within the law, something has happened that the law hasn't taken care of it, subject to Chapter 25, Parliament can deal with it. But Chapter 25 is about constitutional amendment. And again, the learning is that Parliament cannot make a law to amend something that is entrenched in the Constitution. So Parliament cannot make a law to continue President Akufo-Addo's term. That would be against the spirit and the letter of the Constitution, because the President's clauses in the Constitution are entrenched. And the tenure of his presidency is also entrenched. From the time that he's sworn in, 4 years after he's gone, he would have to submit himself to a general election. So Article 298 doesn't work. Parliament cannot do anything to extend the president's tenure. Parliament can extend his own tenure under 1132 under the state of war, but then it's assumed that there's a president in place. So the new learning is that from the look of everything in the Constitution, it would appear that the 1992 Constitution has not conceptualized a situation where we cannot hold a general election. In other words, the 1992 Constitution of Ghana makes the election, the holding of general elections on December 7th, so important, such a big priority, a sine qua non to the existence of our democracy, that it keeps it as a bona fides of the law. So 7 December must occur. That's the conclusion. 7 December elections must happen. That's what the Constitution seems to be telling us, that it hasn't given us any room not to have elections on the 7th of December. In whatever circumstances, the Constitution seems to say that 7 December is a sine qua non to the establishment of the Constitution itself and to the establishment of our democracy, because it speaks to the fundamental distribution of the authority of states under the social contract. The legislative authority and the executive authority are distributed on the 7th of December. Those are paramount institutions as far as our democracy is concerned. So that's our new conclusion. If we get stronger, newer learning, we will come and share with you. But the conclusion now is that in spite of Article 113 and in spite of Article 60, the new learning is that the 1992 Constitution has made no provision for the situation where there is no election. So elections of December 7th will happen. How are we going to do that? What's the Electoral Commission going to do? We have a few suggestions for the Electoral Commission tonight, if they are minded to listen, because we do have about 30,000 polling stations. If by 7 December we still have to abide by social distancing, then the Electoral Commission should start looking at increasing the number of polling stations for the purpose of December 7th, so that we can sufficiently social distance and also cast our ballots in safety. The cost of the election is going to be bigger because of COVID. So Electoral Commission must get ready, and Parliament perhaps must get ready to approve new bills in terms of legislation to allow the Electoral Commission to raise that amount of money. Nose mask for 12 million people around the country, and gloves, a pair of gloves each for 12, 13, that's 12 million voters. You talk about those who are going to work on voting day and all of that. I'm talking 16-something million. So we're going to have a big budget election this year because the Constitution says the election must happen. And if the election must happen within COVID, and if we are still within social distancing, polling stations must be increased. We have about 30,000, nearly 30,000 polling stations now. We should be thinking about doubling it maybe, so that whatever queue you see at the the queue you see on voting day. You can't have these kinds of queues on voting day for 2020 election because of COVID. So you're going to have socially distanced queues and socially distanced activity for people to cast their ballots. Sanitizer will be a big deal all over the place. So over to you, Madam Jean Mensah, and over to you, Mr. Bossman Asare, Dr. Bossman Asare, over to both of you. You have your work cut out for you. There's going to be a lot of work to do, and a lot of thinking must go through the process, because the Constitution says December 7th election should happen, and my guess is that it will happen. There will still be ample time to read your messages later tonight, I promise. Now, though, I have the distinguished barrister, Yaopon, in the studio, 20 years at the bar, and today he won a court victory. But is it really a victory? Is it a Pyrrhic victory? Is it a defeat of anti-corruption? Lawyer, welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much.
I'm sure you have been looking at social media, and many people are not happy that you prosecuted, quote unquote, the Auditor General, who is thought to be an anti-corruption mouthpiece, and now you have successfully convicted him for contempt of the High Court. Explain to us. I mean, people who are non-lawyers, what does it mean?
Well, thank you very much. I would prefer to be modest. So in future, if you may just use some modest words to describe me. I'm yet to be distinguished. Okay. I hope I will get there one day, though. Well, I didn't prosecute the Auditor General. Neither did I sentence him or convict him. The Auditor General works with law. The laws of Ghana have set out parameters for him. The same law has also provided procedure and legal regime for his accountability. And that's the reason why he, and not any other person, and I say he, not even the person, Auditor General, but the office of the Auditor General alone can disallow and surcharge any monies that may have been paid to someone. So that if a public officer has the power to pay you for work done, it is only the Auditor General who can look into the books and say that that person was not entitled to the money, but you paid him that money. I'm not going to accept it. Refund the money. He may not even want to ask the person who received the money to pay back to the state. It is the office of the Auditor General alone in this country, as far as I'm concerned, that has that opportunity to do that. And the same vein, the same law also provides that where the Auditor General's office or the Auditor General exercises that power, the other person against whom the decision is made for him to, quote unquote, refund any money that have been paid also has a right to appeal. And when the person appeals and serves the papers of appeal through the court on the Auditor General, the Auditor General has 14 days after the service of the process of the appeal on him to bring all the documents on which he based his decision to the court and to the person that he has surcharged, that is the appellant.
Okay, so here in this matter, the Auditor General surcharged Yao Safo-Mafo.
And not him alone, and 4 other eminent financial personnel, or let's say administrators at the Ministry of Finance.
Did it include the Minister of Finance?
No, not him, but
okay, other people. So
some 4 public officers.
So Yao Safo-Mafo, the senior minister, and 4 public were surcharged for the payment of how much money?
$1 million to
$1 million. So that's 4 million cedis.
To a company called Crow and Associates,
a UK-based company.
Yes, I should think so.
So Auditor General felt that this money was paid without what procurement?
Well, in the view of the Office of the Auditor General, the monies were paid, but they could not specifically lay their hands on evidence of work done
by the Kroll company.
But that is an allegation.
Okay, I get it.
That aspect is still in court for the appeal, so I may not have the
okay. So then, when this happened, what did Safo-Mafo then do?
Well, Mr. Safo-Mafo and his other colleagues, 4 colleagues, believe that the allegation leveled against them by the Auditor General was unsubstantiated. It has no basis, and they exercise their right to appeal. So they appealed against the decision.
In the High Court?
In the High Court, yes, because then you see the Auditor General's decision as a very powerful one indeed. So you have to appeal against it. It's as if another court, let's say the district court, for example, has given a decision, or the circuit court has given a decision, a civil, of course, circuit court will have gone on appeal, but it's like a district court decision, which is appealable to the High Court. Now, so the law and the framers of that law were had foresight. They were visionaries. It is one, in fact, I think it is the only rule I'm aware of presently, apart from a few others, but in terms of its forthrightness, this is one of the rules which says that if you are to file something in court within a specific period, in this case 14 days, and you fail to do so, you have committed contempt against the High Court. Okay, so you have disrespected the High Court, and you have brought the administration of justice into disrepute by your failure to comply with that. It's a very strong provision indeed. So the Osafoma for the senior minister filed against an appeal at the High Court against the Auditor General's conclusions. Yes, once again, I will insist that we add the others, because it's, otherwise it will be like it's being personalized in his name. And the others. Yeah, forgive me. Yeah, okay. So they filed. They filed. So, and then the Auditor General had 14 days to respond to this application. Yes, so after filing the appeal on their behalf, we ensured that it was served on the Auditor General. Now, when we conducted the search at the court, the court registrar or his authorized agent indicated that the process was served on the Auditor General. We filed it, I think, 11 December 2019. Then they certified that on either 12th or 13th, I think, December 2019, it was served on the Auditor General. You filed it on when? 11th of December 2019. Yes, sir. The next day it was served on him. 2 days. 2 days, I think, okay. Yeah. And then we asked whether the Auditor General had filed any process, and the answer was no. And we conducted this search 1 month after the service. So that was, I think, around 13th or 12th January 2020. So that we even allowed another 2 weeks to expire or elapse. Because the first 2 weeks would have taken us to maybe somewhere around 29th or 30th December. All right? But we decided to, let's just go through Christmas and so on. So after 1 month, nothing has been filed by the Auditor General. And my client said that they have to exercise their right as citizens of Ghana to bring this violation of the rules to the attention of the court. Mind you, contempt of court is not, as the courts have consistently held, for the vindication of the rights of the parties. It is only for the vindication of the sanctity of the judicial power of the court. What about this matter that the Auditor General can't find a lawyer because he was being frustrated by getting his own personal lawyer, etc., etc.? Oh, well, I mean, I'm not aware of that. The audit service has a whole legal department. And in fact, many of the cases, the Sylvester Mensah one, about 5 or 6 other ones, the internal lawyers of the audit service were the ones that prosecuted the case. In fact, today, the judge said, and I'm not sounding boastful, that we are the only ones that have raised this issue of the violation, because the violation have happened over the time. That's the Auditor General never response. Because that court is a court that is dedicated by law under the hand of the previous Chief Justice, which is continuing to hear most of these disallowance and surcharge cases. And the judge took judicial notice, even asked some of the lawyers, that some of the cases, they didn't even provide the documents. The very documents you claim you relied on to give a decision. But that's a serious matter. Yes, and so... And it's captured in the judgment, some of these things you're saying? We are reading, but it was, some of them were off caps. But you see, the point is that, the court said that, the court was aware of this provision, that if you don't file this thing within 14 days, it's contempt. But it's not for the court to raise it. And some of the lawyers from the audit service had to admit that even those that they filed, it was way out of time, in total disobedience of the law. And so this was an opportunity for the court to even call on the office, and I don't want to say the auditor, the office of the Auditor General to be businesslike, and these were the words that the court used, page 45 of the decision, and this is what I'm holding here. That's a copy. It says, the court will, in the circumstances, rather caution and discharge the respondent, the Auditor General, and warn him to have as businesslike, serious, and timeous an attitude to appeals and challenges to the decisions he makes, as he would the surcharges and disallowances, as he cannot choose which part of the rules he uses in carrying out his statutory duties to obey and which one he would like to ignore, disregard, and disrespect.
Oh, that's a harsh words.
Oh, they are not harsh. They are the reality. Because, and especially so where...
Okay, so what happens from now?
So,
he's been convicted of contempt. What happens?
So, yes, so the court we filed an application that the court should affirm our belief that his failure or refusal to file those documents which he should have within 14 days amounted to contempt of court, and the court accepted that. Okay. So he was found liable for contempt of court. Then you move on to sentencing, and the court took a few things into consideration. First of all, his lawyer dutifully apologized on his behalf and also pleaded for mitigation and so on, and not to give him custodial sentence. And I also, on behalf of my client, pleaded with the court to deal with him leniently, because Mr. Osafo-Maafo and his friends had never desired seriously that he should be in prison, even though by the practice you may use the word in prison, but we also said or any other alternative remedy that will ensure that the sanctity of the court is enhanced and maintained. So we also pleaded with the court, which sometimes some lawyers on the opposite side may not do, but we pleaded with the court to deal with him leniently, and the court said this. So, and something very interesting, in sentencing the respondent, the Auditor General, this court has in mind the very crucial role of the respondent in our country, and will not wish to dog him and discourage him or his office in the performance of his duties with a harsh custodial sentence. And listen to this, especially in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh, that's interesting. That's very, very interesting.
You understand?
COVID-19 found its way into the
oh, yes, it brings benefit to some, and it brings deprivation to others.
Okay, so now what's going to happen?
So now, well, the main appeal is pending. We are going back to the court.
So the Auditor General is now required to file his response?
Well, in the course of time, the Auditor General filed.
Oh, he has filed?
Way out of time. Way out of time.
Well, then all this is very academic, isn't it?
It's not. The law is not that you should file or not to file. You should file within 14 days. And if you don't file 14 days after the service of the process, it's contempt of court.
Fair enough, but that's for you, the lawyers. I mean, for us, even journalists, this is a very academic. So he has filed.
No, you see, that's
the fact of the matter is that he has filed.
That is what I'm saying. That the makers of the law, don't forget that Occupy Ghana in particular. I mean, that law, if I may be pardoned to say, was their baby.
Yeah.
And these are strong lawyers.
Yeah.
All right, and they found it necessary, and it was accepted by the Rules of Court Committee, which also, because it's CI, had to go through
about the surcharge issue.
Yes, that they had reason to state that if the Auditor General refuses to file this process within 14 days or 14 days after service of the appeal, it's contempt of court. It has nothing to do with whether you file later or not.
The documents that he relied on to come to the conclusion that these persons had committed an offense.
Yes.
He has filed it.
Yes, he has.
So the case is now going to be
not committed an offense. That they are liable to refund
the $1 million.
And we have already.
Okay. So he's filed. So the case is ongoing.
Yes, we are going back on the 19th of this month.
For what?
The appeal
the final
itself.
ruling? Is it a final or not?
No,
beginning?
to consider the appeal.
Okay. To consider your appeal.
Yes, our appeal.
Okay. Then your appeal is challenging the Auditor General that he didn't have sufficient basis to come to the conclusion.
Fantastic. Yes.
Okay. All right. Cool. So okay.
So for lack of
academic,
time,
but congratulations anyway.
It's not so academic. The point is that this is, as the court even found, unprecedented, because it's a matter that, at first sight, even very experienced lawyers will say that. I mean, how can not filing something amount to contempt? But that is the law.
Absolutely. Okay, let's get on to the other matter that I'm sure other people are still interested in. Supreme Court is getting some good additions.
Right.
And some fascinating ones from the appointment committee hearings that occurred today. Justice Amadou Tanko
that was yesterday
has been passed. And he also came up very impressively, Justice Tanko. I knew him
not
many years
surprisingly
ago
anyway.
when he was big on football. Now he's not that big on football. What did you make of that one?
Oh, well, I mean, I wasn't surprised. I mean, I would rather have been surprised if he did otherwise. I mean, he always comes out as very impressive. He has so much knowledge of the law that sometimes you wonder whether he has enough space in that part of the faculty given to us by Allah for his sake, let me say that, to even store it. And you know, he had some practice in Nigeria as well. And sometimes when the Ghanaian law is not sufficient, especially on the rules, how to go to court and prosecute your case, you think you have got through it. You can use a Nigerian case, for example, which of course doesn't bind on our course, but they are always as a guide to us. And you can see that gradually that procedure is adopted also. And so I wasn't surprised. In fact, his appointment was long overdue. I mean, somehow...
On your screen now, we have to pay tribute to the Venerable Justice Amadou Tanko, now Amadou Tanko, JSC. Justice. Oh, well, soon to be. Yes. Soon to be, sorry.
If he was president, he would be elected.
Yeah. So it's a JSC elect, if you like. The JSC elect of the Supreme Court.
Yes, he has. I mean, at the bar, he seriously distinguished himself. I mean, I'm not sure there will be anyone who... I mean, he's human, but I think, by and large, he stands out as one of our best lawyers, and now even on the bench, one of the best. I mean, you go to his court, a court in which he is a panel member, fully prepared. Otherwise, you not only will you lose your case, but you find yourself being, I mean, embarrassed.
So you think that generally the bar has received Amadou Tanko's nomination very well?
Oh yes. I mean, everybody I have spoken with so far is deeply satisfied with, not just because of what he did yesterday, but over time. I mean, you can hardly point out any misgiving. Of course, if you lose a case, you won't be satisfied. Yeah. But sometimes you go home and you think that this is a pearl of judgment, and therefore you lost the case, but you lost it honorably. After all, that is what we are.
What about the controversial one, Justice Hone Nuga? He's reported to have said something as a chief. In respect of the president's tenure, it's said to be a very controversial issue. Minority have been very upset with it. Civil society have not been particularly happy with it. Imani, for instance, is calling for him to be rejected as a justice of the Supreme Court based on that. He didn't succeed with the unanimity of the appointments committee, so he now has to go to the committee of the whole. Well, should his apology be accepted? Should he have apologized?
Well, first of all, I think that we need to, or at least let me just say what I understand about all this process. You see, the criteria for the appointment of a person to the what we call the Superior Court of Judicature, High Court, Court of Appeal, and Supreme Court is substantially the same. So that a Court of Appeal judge, until he's removed, unless in our case, in all cases, I should say, once you get to the Court of Appeal, in most cases, you are even more than 20 years at the bar before you can. So that it means that the only bar may be whether or not you are 15 years at the bar to qualify you to the Supreme Court. And most Court of Appeal judges are way more than that number of years at the bar. So it means almost all, in fact, all the Court of Appeal judges we have now are also qualified to be at the Supreme Court. I think so far, if I'm not mistaken, Chebafo may be the youngest in terms of years at the bar, but he's already 20 years. You understand? So he's even qualified to be at the Supreme Court.
The point you're making?
So the point is that the vetting of a person at the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court should be viewed in terms of not whether or not he's qualified by the criteria prescribed by the Constitution to be at the Supreme Court, because he's already qualified for being a Court of Appeal judge.
So he can say anything he likes about
a major political actor. No, just a second. But so the vetting, in my view, of a Court of Appeal judge who is also more than 15 years or more at the bar, it is only about assessment of his work as a judge or assessment of his work as a lawyer, because some are also going just as lawyers and not even as judges. So can we say that a lawyer can profess that a particular political party or even associates himself with a politician, but he's qualified to go to the Supreme Court, but a judge is not? The reason why people may say that is that some are looking at the code of ethics of the judges, that thou shalt not endorse a person who is contesting a general election, for example. I'm just paraphrasing. First of all, at the time that this statement was made by the judge, first, he made the statement as a chief. I have not seen any law that bars judges from being chiefs. In fact, there are about a couple more or so judges of the Superior Court or another court who are also chiefs, and even at least another one who is a paramount chief of a very huge, important, massive
so the point you're making system. Is that.
So my point is that the vetting should, in my view, rather be about assessment of the work that the person has done. Because if by making the statement he had disqualified himself from being a judge, then someone may have filed a petition for his removal, and so far that hasn't happened. So that is an admission by all of us that what he did, it does not qualify him to be a judge or a Superior Court judge, and so he's still qualified to be a Supreme Court judge. In any case, that statement that was made, I understand, and I think he said that it was a document that was written for him to read on behalf of other chiefs and his people in the area. Now, number two, you will see that at that time, the president had not even expressed his intention, or if he did, it was just a mere intention. As it stands now, some even argue that until the MPP goes for their primaries and they endorse the president.
So you are saying
so I'm saying that.
So Justice Eniebua, who's the Chief Justice, if he happens to be the chief of Kodiabe, for instance, and there's a chieftaincy event, he's able to say that Nana Akufo-Addo can get a second term.
Well, no, I mean,
his role as a Supreme Court judge.
No, in the contest, if the person expresses a view that my people believe that the president has provided the necessary leadership qualities, expanded development in our area, and my people believe that he should be given a second term. You see, Paul, just to conclude, because there's no time, I always say that one thing that God has blessed us with, above all others, is to provide us, if I may say so, with bold and fearless judges. Look, in most cases, remember when MPP was in opposition, even during the early days of this constitutional dispensation, MPP versus Attorney General, MPP versus 31st December case, GBC. The MPP who were in opposition were rather winning more cases, and most of these judges had been appointed by President Rawlings even when he was in the PNDC, and some had continued. And there are many examples where our judges don't care about how they were appointed and who did so. They will rule against you if you're a government and you are wrong. It doesn't matter whether the person on the other side is a small person like me in terms of stature or status in life. Right, so my point is that let us give our judges the benefit of applying the law, their knowledge of their knowledge of the law, the evidence, and their belief in God or Allah, or the faith they have sworn and the oath they have taken, and the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana. If at any point in time you think a judge had abandoned this and you have exhausted all the remedies provided by law, some will say you give it to God in prayer. but there are other provisions that can enable you to even bring impeachment proceedings against a judge if there is sufficient grounds for it. And the Judicial Service has also, in addition, by themselves, established an office where you can even make complaints against particular judge. But I'm saying that so far, let us have absolute belief, strong belief, conviction in our courts, and especially in our judges, and just test everything that we believe is resolvable by law. And we are not like in America,
so
where
you are confident that the judges will show fidelity to the law,
irrespective,
no, they do. Irrespective of what they say.
But of course, when even your client loses a case, even you, the lawyer, you feel so much pain. Sometimes even more than your client. But that is the beauty of it. That's why there are other layers of divisions of the court where you can even climb up to the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court. Sometimes if there are sufficient legal grounds, you go for review. But litigation must end in any case. So in my view, I think that there's no honor. Look, I have no apology to say that this Justice for All program, perhaps it's his baby. And the number of people that through him and his committee and his leadership have been discharged from prisons where they had no business being there. But we had abandoned them, we had forgotten about them. I'm sure if we were to cast vote, perhaps these people and the thousands of their relatives would have voted for him. So let us give him the benefit. And I pray that Parliament should form a consensus, not just on a partisan line, but form a consensus and just vote for him in total. They may not even have to go to plenary. If they have any other form of, if the committee itself has the power, they are masters of their own rules, to review their decision, I think they should do so and clear him. And I can bet that he will really discharge. You know, people have their own,
be a very good judge.
Their own dispositions.
I like the justice for all thing that you talk about.
Oh yes, the justice for
all. That
all
was something noble, very noble that he led.
I can tell you, if you are one of them who had been in prison for 19 years just on remand, only because you have been forgotten.
If viewers don't know, this was the program that judges and lawyers went into the court and became lawyers for remand prisoners, argued before the court and got them out.
Yes.
A lot of them got out.
Yes. Yeah. And this man, if if I have, with all apologies, that is his baby. And he had, through that, many people have had justice. It's one of the most important achievements that even the judiciary itself has struck for us.
I have a politician coming on after you.
So thank you so much.
We have to leave. But that's an excellent advocacy about everything that you have said. So when is your upon getting nomination for the Supreme Court? We can't wait.
God is good.
Hold your seat, and we'll take a short break. When we are done, Adom-Otchere Constituency is the next big spot on Good Evening Ghana tonight. We are going to introduce you to the in that regard, the opposition candidate for the constituency, who happens to be the MPP candidate for the constituency. We'll be right back. We are starting Constituency Watch with Adom-Otchere in the studio.
Hello, good people of Ghana. My name is Jacob Akwando, the PRO of Ghana Service. I strongly believe that we should stop giving names to people infected with COVID-19. It could be you, it could be me. Let's stop the stigma. Thank you.
There is 1 million excitement in the air, and Sapper just tapped into the mood with his share of waste bin from the 1 million waste bin project.
1 million waste bin project?
It is a nationwide social intervention project aimed at helping improve the lives of people by correcting poor sanitation practices and improving solid waste collection service delivery in Ghana by providing 1 million radio frequency identity tagged free waste bins.
Radio frequency identity tagged waste bins? This will enable monitoring of how often the waste bins are emptied in real time. Wow!
From your homes, offices, schools, hospitals, right through to places of worship. Yeah, G baby.
How and where do I sign on?
Our branded registration and distribution officials will come along with their ID cards to register and distribute waste bins to all households. Just provide them with your name, contact number, house number, and digital address. Once signed on, you'll be introduced to your zone's designated waste collection service provider who will collect your waste on agreed days of the week.
Wait, is it free?
Yes, of course. The waste bins are free. You would, however, be required to pay a token as a registration fee at the point of registration and a monthly subscription fee as communicated by your service provider. Payment for such services can be done through mobile cash payments, short code *887*87# or through all Ecobank branches and payment platforms nationwide.
Oh my God, this is already getting exciting.
Yes, bro. With the 1 million waste bin project, you would enjoy improved solid waste collection,
Easy access to complaint services.
quick response to complaint, easy and convenient means of payment.
What am I waiting for?
What are you waiting for? Get ready to grab your free share of waste bins now.
Welcome back to the show, and thank you very much. Mr. Apia Debra has joined us in the studio. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Paul. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Today we're going to talk a lot of politics, but when I said you were coming to the studio, some people wanted me to ask you about National Health Insurance, which is where you work. What do you actually do there?
I'm in charge of special projects right now,
Okay.
but I was the chief internal auditor for a couple of years.
Okay. Also, you've been there for a while.
I've been there for 9 years now.
Oh, 9 years as the National as Chief Internal Auditor. Okay, so what's this issue about the National Health Insurance Services paying money to the COVID fund when you owe the struggling private hospitals money, especially in these difficult times? The hospitals have not forgiven you for doing that. And they were even thinking about suing you because you owe them and you are sending the money to a government fund that doesn't need money. As of yesterday, the former Chief Justice, who is chairman, said that they have made 44 million Ghana cedis. Why are you adding the money that you need to pay to private hospitals that are working so hard? What's the rationale behind that?
You know, we have a deep and abiding sense of corporate social responsibility at the National Health Insurance Authority. And more specifically, our allocation formula, in other words, our annual budget always makes room for health-related matters. So the National Health Insurance Authority has always supported, outside of paying claims, I've always supported paying monies to improve the health care of Ghanaians. So National Health Insurance money has been used to set up hospitals. Mm-hmm. National Health Insurance money has been used to pay for fumigation under the malaria control program. Mm-hmm. And these are significant budget items in the past. So paying 250,000 cedis for COVID, which is not covered under the scheme because it is so novel, it cannot be covered by National Health Insurance scheme, is our token of the enormity of the task ahead. And I think it's in the right place.
When will you pay the hospitals?
We always pay in arrears, so we keep paying. Now, some time ago, we were paying 24 months in arrears. Now it's 12 months in arrears. And the idea is to progressively reduce the amount in arrears. So we are hoping, by the grace of God, if things continue well, to be paying 6 months in arrears or even 3 months in arrears. Mm. So we've done well over the period, and most of the hospitals will attest to that we've reduced the arrears from 24 months to 12 months. And if things go well, it will come down to 9 months to 6 months over time.
Okay, let's now talk about the clotting called the constituency, and we are interested in that because we had to start a program called Constituency Watch, and we have not done it because the MPP has not completed. They gave the date of 25th April, so we're working according to that because we did it in 2016. We have not done that because the MPP has not finalized its parliamentary candidature, especially for the constituencies that the party has, and that will be majority of the constituencies in Parliament, 169 yes. in Parliament. Fortunately, you already are in place, and so we'd like you to give us a background of the constituency. Tell us how it looks like, and this is not the first time we're going to talk to you about the constituency. This is an introductory remark. We'd like to show viewers who have not seen this, though. In 2016, we had gone to the constituency to do what we call a constituency watch. This is just 1 minute of what we did in 2016. And let's have a look at me standing on the Osu Oxford Street introducing the program in March 2016. So here is the Klote-Korle constituency in Ghana, and it's in Accra, in the capital. Klote-Korle houses Osu, which is the initial first ever commercial hotbed in Accra, here in Osu. Then there's Adabraka, which also has a bit of history because Adabraka is the first residence of the elite Ghanaians who were contesting colonial authority. Most of them lawyers and merchants, business merchants, J.B. Dankwa, Pa Grant, etc. They all lived in Adabraka. So the constituency is Osu, Adabraka, and Asylum Down. Asylum Down is a hodgepodge of business people, traders, most of them from the hinterlands, most of them from the Akan extraction. And then you have a bit of North Ridge, which is really government establishments, but these days also hosting big banks and businesses. The leading mobile phone company in Ghana, MTN, until recently had its head office in one of the areas of Ridge and has now moved its current head office also still in the Ridge area. Now, many banks also have their headquarters in this constituency. So it's a rich constituency in terms of the collection of taxes for the Accra Metropolitan Authority, but it's also a hotbed of political history in terms of the resistance to the colonial authority, which was begun and nurtured in Osu with the event of 1948 of the shooting at the crossroads led by the old soldiers who had come from the Second World War. So Osu has a rich history, both politically, business, and also intellectually. Most of the old law firms in Ghana are based in Adabraka, which is part of the Klote-Korle constituency. So this is the constituency about whom there's so much controversy in this election. The scenarios are so many, and we'll be talking about the scenarios tonight. But this is the constituency. Now, where we are standing right now is in the center of Osu, which is the first ever commercial suburb in Ghana. And to my right is the famous middle-class restaurant called Papaya. And ahead of me is the road that leads to the Osu Castle, the seat of government for the colonial authority, and until recently, the seat of government of the President of Ghana. To my right is a place called Cuckoo Hill, where incidentally our former president, J.E.A. Mills, had his office for a very, very long time. And behind me is the famous Osu Oxford Street, which until recently was a famous street for entertainment and business. And down to the left-hand side is the Laboni area in an estate named Nyaniba Estates. Nyaniba is the name of the mother of the first president of Ghana, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. So all of this history put together and the current presentation of the Klote-Korle constituency makes it particularly important in the analysis, whether it's business, whether it's political history, whether it's a mixture of tribes in Ghana, or whether it's about politics. Now, what's happening in Klote-Korle in this election? The controversy is brewing, and it's brewing very fast. The two political parties, the main political parties, the National Democratic Congress and the New Patriotic Party, both have such huge interest in the candidates that are contesting for them that there's been so much controversy about the matter. The latest is that within the New Patriotic Party, the candidate who won the first primaries and lost the second. Okay, so we faded a sound out there. You can go on Facebook and look at video on demand and get it if you want. But that's 4 years ago. Some of it is relevant. Some of it has dramatically changed. And Prince Adai is here to tell us. Prince Apia Deborah is here to tell us the changes that have occurred. You've done very well in uniting the MPP since the event of 2016. Even though your name didn't come up then, suddenly you have put the parties together, and the MPP is not going to have a independent candidate on the ballot. Certainly at this time. That's very good. Tell us the history of that. Who's the first MP of Klote-Korle?
That's going to be very interesting. But I'll try to be as brief as possible.
Yes.
Korle-Klote, I think the name used to be called Osu Klote. But before it was Osu Klote, it was part of Accra East constituency. And before it was part of Accra East, it was part of the Accra Central municipal election.
Accra Central.
Accra Central.
So in say 1951.
So in 1951.
It was part of Nkrumah's constituency.
It was part of Nkrumah's constituency.
Oh, I see. That was a large constituency.
It was a large.
From Accra, Odododio.
From Odododio
up to Osu.
Osu included Labadi and Teshi. All was part of Accra
Oh, was part of Nkrumah's constituency?
Yes.
Oh, I see.
It was big.
So Teshi and Nungwa were the other ones?
Yes.
I see. That's interesting.
So,
and the CPP cleaned it up?
CPP did.
Yeah.
Nkrumah went against Adom-Otchere Bilante,
yes.
Blessed Memory,
yeah.
and he won.
Yeah.
And then in the 1954 elections, it became Accra East. And it was won by Akwaje, Ebenezer Akwaje.
Yes, the Interior Minister.
The Interior Minister.
The Big Six Akwaje.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then...
That's a big name.
It's a big name.
Yeah.
Akwaje won again in 1960.
I see.
And by 1964, we have a one-party state. Nkrumah was overthrown in 66. So in 1969, when we had the second Republican elections, it became Osu-Klote.
Osu-Klote.
And that was the first time it became a separate constituency.
Okay.
And it was called Osu-Klote. The man who won that election was Henry Romulus Sawyer, popularly called Harry Sawyer.
Oh, Harry Sawyer?
Yes.
For which party?
And he won it as an independent.
Oh, that's interesting. Yes. Harry Sawyer was an independent candidate?
Yes, he was the
He wasn't an Nkrumahist?
He started with the Ghana Congress Party, Ayubuzi's party. And then by twist of some fate, he ended up as an independent candidate. And he won overwhelmingly. So
this was Osu-Klote?
This was Osu-Klote in
so
1960.
Which area? The same area we have today?
The same area.
Did it include Adabraka?
It included Adabraka.
Okay. Asalam Down?
Asalam Down.
So Asalam Down, Adabraka, and Osu itself?
Yes.
Okay. All of Osu? Osu Ari, Osu Kadigbo?
Osu Ari, it used to come all the way to Cantonment.
Somewhere around this area?
Yes, ended up around Cantonment post office. So it used to be
Cantonment post office, which is now part of Dade Kotopon.
Which is now part of Dade Kotopon.
Okay.
And it came all the way to the back of the veterinary.
Oh, yes.
Near the large general hospital area.
Okay.
So it used to be much bigger.
That also is part of Dade Kotopon these days?
It's now part of Dade Kotopon.
Okay.
So Harry Sawyer is actually the grandfather of Klote-Kole politics, or Osu-Klote politics. And in 1979...
So he won it in 69?
He won it as an independent
candidate. So he sat in parliament as an independent candidate?
As an independent candidate. The first independent candidate who won an election in Ghana. So at this point, I think we have to say, extend our sympathies to Mrs. Esther Sawyer.
Who just passed
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So our sympathies to the Sawyer family. Now, in 79, that is the Third Republic, Harry Sawyer came again. This time for the UNC, United Nations Convention, which was...
Peter Ajete's party?
Peter Ajete was there.
Professor Dubois.
Professor Dubois.
Interesting.
The presidential candidate was Pawili, William Ofori.
Alhaji Mahama Idrisu.
Alhaji Mahama Idrisu.
Obeda Samoa.
Thank you. So he came in.
These were the kingpins of the UNC.
And he won overwhelmingly again. I mean, we used to sing when we were little kids. Harry Sawyer Odinfene. Osu-Klote Anyon Seda. In other words,
what does that mean?
It means you are clean. Osu-Klote will follow you all the time.
Okay.
And we used to sing that as kids. So this is the genesis of Osu-Klote as a constituency.
Okay.
Now, in the Fourth Republic, it showed up for the first time as Klote-Kole.
In 92?
In 92.
Okay.
The name changed from Osu-Klote to Klote-Kole. Now, Klote is a lagoon at Osu, and Kole is another lagoon at Accra. It lies within Ododo-Diodo, the area we call Lavender Hill. So these two lagoons, in Gan custom, Klote is the male deity and Kole is the female deity.
I see.
And when they pair the two, they call it Klote-Kole.
Okay.
And it covers what we now have at Osu, Tudu, going all the way to the estuary, i.e. Odo River, and then cuts across the railway line to circle back to Nyeniba Estate. Laboni.
Oh, Klote-Kole goes to Kwame Nkrumah Circle?
Goes to Kwame Nkrumah Circle. The rail
because
line.
Adabraka is part of it. Okay,
exactly.
Okay,
The rail line comes to Kwame Nkrumah Circle, the Dubai, and then comes straight on Ring Road to Nyeniba Estate. You turn right into where they sell the wachi, Kataudias, and then comes across back to the sea.
So the border is Dade Kotopon?
The border,
and the border is Ododo-Diodo?
The border is Dade Kotopon, Ododo-Diodo, and Ayawaso Central, Ayawaso East.
Oh, that's still a big constituency.
It is a big constituency.
So who won it in 92?
In 92, it was won by E.W. Norty. E.W. Norty was the NDC candidate at the time, and he was an Harry Sawyer protege.
Okay.
And like I said, anybody Arisoya brings to Clote Kole wins.
Okay.
So Arisoya brought him in and he won. And at that time, the MPP was represented by Osalutron, Colonel Osalutron, who was ADC to former head of state, General Ankra.
Okay.
But if you remember, in those times, the first elections in the Fourth Republic, the presidential elections were held first, and the results didn't go well. So we had a stolen verdict, and MPP boycotted the parliamentary elections. So UW North had a walk-in. So that was in 92. Then in 96, it was a three-way race between the MPP's candidate, Gilbert Quarte, David Lamte of blessed memory.
My man, David Lamte.
Who used to be an MPP man in a way.
Yeah,
because we was with him during Kumipreku.
Yes.
And then Torkuno who went independent in 96. Now, Torkuno was the NDC chairman at the time.
Of the constituency?
Yes.
I see.
And he was the parliamentary candidate, elected, and then they brought in David Lamte and asked him to step down. And he said no. So that's how he ended up as an independent.
So it was NDC independent?
It was NDC independent.
David Lamte was NDC legal?
NDC legal.
Then there was an MPP?
Then there was an MPP.
And David Lamte still won it?
He won it. It was a very close race. I think all
Did
the
Torkuno
candidates...
come second?
Torkuno was
the
last.
MPP came
no,
second?
MPP came second.
Okay.
They all had 17,000 at a point.
I see.
They all
during the counting?
During the counting, they all had 17,000, and it was
just a few numbers.
Small numbers, until David Lamte shot through with some additional 2,000 votes or so. It was quite interesting. I was at the Art Center at the time.
So David Lamte ended up with 19,000?
Yes.
And he won it?
And he won it.
To a big celebration?
To a big celebration.
I remember that.
It was quite something else.
Yeah.
Because everybody thought Torkuno was going to win.
Yes,
he had a very massive campaign. There was money. And
a lot of money in that campaign.
And they threw out a lot of money.
I always say that if that campaign had been filmed, it would have been massive.
Oh no!
Because the campaign activity that even as students we saw was brutal every day on a daily basis.
No joke.
The broom here and this there.
Yeah.
You know.
Moko Sandi.
Yeah,
it was massive.
And the mayor of Accra, E.T. Mensah, was heavy on David Lamte's side.
Yes.
And so there was a lot of machinations going on.
Exactly. A lot of things went on. So
that was 96.
It's not the size of the campaign.
Yeah.
And that was 96. I think Torkuno eventually came back to the NDC before he passed.
Yeah.
They gave him a massive burial in 2000. Then in 1920, in 2000, Honorable Adom-Otchere came on board. And he swept off David Lamte with almost 9,000 plus votes. That was the biggest margin ever, and it's still the case. The biggest margin in Clote Kole parliamentary elections was when Honorable Adom-Otchere swept off David Lamte with 9,000 votes. And then he came on, he was able to hold the seat for 2 terms. And then in 2008, he was swept off by Niaz Chitiama, who won with about just a little over 2,600 votes.
That was 2008?
That was 2008.
Okay,
so again, Chitiama came in again with a little over 1,200 votes, and then he was swept off by Senator Rawlings.
In the primaries?
In the primaries.
Okay.
So
and then 2012, what happened? Chitiama won in 2012. So this 2016 you are talking about?
So 2016.
And MPP got divided with Philip Addison and Inouye.
Philip Addison and Inouye Norte.
So when did you come in?
I came in recently.
Why did you come in?
I thought and I felt very strongly that the party needed a non-aligned candidate. The Clote Kole constituency, as we have it then, was divided into 3 camps. So you had an Inouye camp, which was very strong. Even though he went independent, his camp is still very strong. And then you have the Philip Addison camp. And then you have the Honorable Niaje Tyrus camp. So these 3 camps was pushing for power. And if we continue that way, we're going to remain in opposition for a very long time. And so that is where I felt compelled to step forward, because I did not belong to any of those 3 factions, to come in and unite the party. So if you looked at the primaries, all we kept preaching was unity. And the catchphrase was the unifier. And we were able to do that very successfully. We won with 67% of the vote during the primaries. At the primaries.
Oh, I see. That's massive.
And that is the biggest margin we've had in the primaries election in Clotte-Corley. And it's because the delegates responded to our message, our call for unity, and the need to get united so that we can reclaim the seat. Because if you looked at the numbers, we lost by less than 900 votes.
Yeah.
Total.
And President Akufo-Addo actually won.
And President Akufo-Addo won by more than 5,000 votes. So we actually gave away the seat in 2016. If sanity had prevailed a little bit, we would have gone through it. And so we are not going to repeat that mistake. We are now united, and we thank God that the party is now united behind Prince Appiah-Debrah, and we are going to take this.
Who are you? Are you an indigene from Osu with this your Akan names, Prince Appiah-Debrah?
Yes, my name is very Akan, Prince Appiah-Debrah, but I was born and raised at Osu. My mother is Ghan from Osu. Both her parents are from Osu. Her mother is from Adom-Otchere. Her father is from Odates-Ronwe. And I was born at Osu Ajumankun, raised from kindergarten, we call it ABC. From kindergarten all the way to law school, I stayed at Osu Ajumankun. So I know the place pretty well, and they know me. I can say very confidently that the spirit of Osu is behind me, and we are going to win the seat massively. Because at this point, we are not only talking about winning the elections at Clotte-Corley. We are talking about fighting for the soul of the party in Clotte-Corley. And I saw what you just showed on the constituency in 2016, talking about all the big people who led the fight for independence in Ghana, Nekwabna Bone, Oswala Tamancha at the time, J.B. Dankwa, Kwekuba Kun, Pagran, all those big names, Akwaje, all those people lived at Osu. Osu was the boiling point in the struggle for independence. As a matter of fact, Mrs. Dove, I think David Dankwa married her.
Yes, David Dankwa's wife. Yes.
The first female journalist in this country. It's also from the constituency. And so this is a constituency that is rich in history. In fact, a big man told me it was the intellectual capital of the country. And it still remains the prima donna of all the constituencies in Ghana. And it will do the NPP a lot of good. If we took it.
We'll come to the constituency on our constituency watch, and we'll talk to you again, Prince Appiah-Debrah, Honorable Prince Appiah-Debrah. We'll be monitoring what you're doing because Osu is important for many young Ghanaians because of what it offers. We will leave it here at this stage, and then we will have Prince Appiah-Debrah. If you just cut the interview, we'll have it on our Facebook page on video on demand, just as part so that you can watch it. And then we'll talk to you again. So are you going to stop work to run the campaign, or are you going to do it side by side?
I will eventually have to stop work because this campaign, I've realized, is more than a full-time work. I thought. But
your background is what? Accounting?
My background, I read law and accounting at the university. So I did a double major in law and accounting.
At the University of Ghana?
At the University of Ghana. Only two of us did that.
The second person. I didn't hear that before.
Yes, and they stopped after us.
Law and accounting.
Law and accounting.
Very
at the
interesting.
Same time. The second person who did that is now a justice of the High Court. Justice Eugene Nyantenyedu. So it was just the two of us who did law and accounting. I went to law school, stopped midway, went to the United States, and quickly became a certified public accountant. In Ghana, we call it chartered accountant.
I see.
And then I did my MBA at the prestigious graduate school, Kester Graduate School at DePaul University. Graduated with MBA with distinction, advanced management accounting. And then I worked for Arthur Anderson, which was the biggest accounting firm at the time.
One of the big seven at the time.
Big four at the time. And then went to Camacho America as assistant controller, and then went to Caterpillar as a Six Sigma black belt. So we've experienced public accounting. In Ghana, we call it auditing. Experienced public accounting, experienced internal auditing, experienced financial reporting, experienced business transformations before returning back to Ghana. And since then, I've gone back for my law license. And so I double up as a lawyer and accountant.
But you do accounting more? I
do accounting more.
It's kind of interesting profession. We'll leave it here.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. And Sorry that we kept you waiting for too long.
It's all right.
And thank you, viewers, for watching. This has been a full political discussion program. Thursday, we'll come up with another edition of Good Evening Ghana. After this program, those of you who didn't wake up early today to see Good Morning Ghana, Randy Abe and his guests will do their thing after this program. We'll show you what they did in the morning, and I'm sure that you enjoy it. There was a very interesting discussion between the MPP rep and John Jinapo about economics, and I'm sure that you would like it. Thanks for watching. Good night.